Hi, boys and girls. As you know, we are talking about farms this week at Alleluia Preschool. And I thought it would be fun to go through what you might see on a farm. And to do that, we aren't actually going to a farm, but I'm going to use a slideshow to talk about farms, okay? So let me get this set up and we'll get started. All right, up at the top of this slide, you can see a word, and it starts with F. And this word is farms, which is what we are talking about this week. And when we talk about farms, we're talking about lots of land. And farmers usually measure the land that they own in acres. So if you ever hear that word, just know that it means land and a certain amount of land that farmers, among others, can own. There are about 2.2 million farms in the United States, and that does sound like a lot, doesn't it? And there are about 897,000 acres of farmland in the United States as well. And the average farm, if you were talking about one farm, it's 444 acres big. So that's something to think about too. All right. So when we think of a farm, we think of lots of land. Now, you and I live in the city of Omaha, Nebraska. And if you think of a city, you think of lots of buildings and everything's close to everything else. Well, if you look at this picture, you just see land and land and land, and you don't see much or any buildings in this one, actually, do you? All right, so when we think of farms, we think of lots of land, but not many buildings. All right, let's look at some of the things we might find on a farm. First of all, this is a farmhouse. And who do you think lives in the farmhouse? Well, you're right, the farmer does. The farmer and his family. And actually, when you think about it, the farmer and the members of his family are all farmers, right? They all work on the land. So this is just one example of a farmhouse. There are all kinds of different examples of farmhouses, but I just picked one to show you. And then what building is this? Yes, this is the barn. And the barn is an important building on a farm, isn't it? And do you know what is in a barn? Well, the farmer can put his animals in the barn. He can put some of the tools or equipment that he uses in the barn. And he can also store some of the grain that he uses to feed his animals. So that's why that's pretty important. But what color is this barn? I know it's red. Now, not all barns are red, but lots of barns that you see are red. And I bet you've seen some here in Nebraska. All right. Now, we're focusing or looking at these tall buildings, not the barn, but these tall buildings. These are called silos. Have you ever seen silos anywhere as you've been traveling around? Silos are used to store lots of grain, and most of the grain is used to feed animals, usually cattle or cows. Okay? So sometimes you see silos on farms. And then do you know what this is? Well, look at this animal here. What are these? I know those are chickens. And this is a chicken coop, which is another thing that you might find on a farm. And oh my goodness, what animals do you see here? Do you see some horses? This is a stable, and you might see a stable on a farm. And those are just some of the buildings that you might find on a farm. So a farm does have a farmhouse, it does have a barn, and then it has all these other buildings. And we don't have time to go into every building, but Mrs. Becker just picked some. Now let's look at some of the pieces of equipment a farmer uses. Do you know what this is? This is a tractor. And do you know what a tractor is used for? A tractor is used to pull things. I know, other pieces of equipment that the farmer uses on his farm or her farm. Also, it can be used to haul things or carry things from one place to another. So tractors are really important, and I bet you've seen tractors before. Now, this is a tractor, and on the tractor is a plow. Oh my goodness, do you know what a plow does? It turns up. and it breaks the soil. So you can see here's the dirt here, and the plow goes through, and when the plow goes through, then it gets to look like this. It almost looks muddy, doesn't it? All right. And then the farmer can take another piece of equipment and attach it to the tractor and plant seeds here. I know, isn't that amazing? All right. And then one of the things that farmers do is they plant their crops in rows. You see row after row after row here. And you know what? Once the farmer plants the seeds in these rows, what do the seeds need to grow? They need water. And how does the farmer get water? Well, hopefully from rain that God sends. And if there isn't a lot of rain, a farmer can put in or use an irrigation system like this. And I bet if you travel around, I know here in Nebraska, definitely we have irrigation systems like this, but you can see these and you'll go, oh, that's right, that's what it's for. It's for watering crops that the farmer plants. And of course, seeds need sunshine too. And then the farmer needs to watch and see if there are any weeds because those weeds need to be taken out. And hopefully, then the crops grow. And then the farmer would be using this piece of machinery. This is a big piece of machinery called a combine. Can you say combine? Right. And a combine can be used to help cut the grain. And in fact, that's what's happening here. Do you see this wide piece? This could be as wide as 40 feet. Okay. Wow, that helps the farmer be able to cut lots and lots of the crop, doesn't it? And that's very helpful for the farmer. Now, there are other things that a combine can be used for, but I think all we need to talk about is that it cuts the crop or the grain. All right, so now let's talk about some of the different kinds of things that farmers can grow, or we can say produce on their land. Do you know what crop this is? This is wheat. And do you know what wheat is used for? Wheat is used to make flour. And we can use flour to make all kinds of things like bread, right? Like cake, all those kinds of fun things. And what crop is this? Can you tell? This is, you can see wheat in Nebraska, by the way, but this is another crop that you can see in Nebraska. This is corn. Oh my goodness. Lots of corn is raised to feed animals. But of course, there are lots of food products that come from corn, and there are lots of other things that corn can be used to make too. So, corn's a very important crop. All right, now this might be a little trickier. These crops are not nearly as tall as the wheat and the corn that we saw before, but these are all vegetables, leafy vegetables, because sometimes there are vegetable farms. And if you think of vegetables, what are some vegetables? Can you think of tomatoes and lettuce and things like that? That's right. And then here's another kind of farm. Sometimes we would call this an orchard. And can you tell what this is or what these are? Apples, right. So some farmers have orchards that grow different kinds of fruits, which is another kind of farm. Oh my goodness, what animal do you see here? Can you tell? It's black and it's white and it goes moo. I know these are all cows. This is called a dairy farm. And what do we get from cows? We get milk, which is what a dairy farmer raises his cows for so that we can have milk. And then milk makes all kinds of other products like cheese and ice cream, among many, many things. And then, of course, what are these? I know, here's some more cows. And this is actually a cattle ranch where this farmer just raises these cows and then they are sold and we can use the cattle for meat and the hides for making leather, and that's how the cattle are used from a cattle ranch. Oh, what kind of animal is this? Right, this is a sheep ranch. This one happens to be, I know this one, it happens to be in Montana. And what do we use sheep for? Do we use sheep for wool? We do. And what about for meat? Sure. Okay. Ah, what animal is this? I know these are all chickens. So we can have farms that are just about raising chickens. And what do we use chickens for? Well, they give us eggs, right? And then what about the meat? I know. And look at all these chickens here. And we can call this a poultry farm too. And again, these are just some of the kinds of farms that we have. And then the last slide shows you some farmers. These farmers happen to be in the state of Georgia. But do you know that farmers work really, really hard for us? They get up really, really early in the morning. They work long, long hours and they work really, really hard. And then hopefully at the end of the harvest season, they are able to sell their crops or their animals and get lots of money so they can turn around and farm again the next year. But farmers work really, really hard. And I want you to know that men and women can be farmers, which is what you see here. And we've talked about this before, but farmers are special community helpers that God gives us, aren't they? That's right. Well, aren't we thankful that God has us um, able to see farms and to have farms around to give us all kinds of things that we need to live? You bet. All right. So that was our brief look at farms. And then Mrs. Becker has talked about her grandpa's farm before. And I forgot that I had a picture of my grandpa's farm. Up here is the farmhouse that I've talked about before. It was a 2-story farmhouse. And then what's this? The barn that was across the road that I talked about. And then this is a water pump. And you take this handle and you move it up and down, up and down. And then over here is where the water comes out. You could wash your hands or you could get a pail and put water in from this. So these are some things that were on my grandpa's farm a long, long time ago. All right, boys and girls, if you haven't been to a farm, I hope you get a chance to do so at some point in time, maybe real, real soon. All right, thanks for listening to all of this about farms. All right, bye bye.